Mantra 10. Anyadeva Anyadevarhutar vidya Nahadhur Vidyaya Iti Shushram Dhirana Yenats Yenastad Vichashre. Translation. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that is a different result is obtained from the culture of science. So, we are discussing on Vidya and Avidya. So one result here, if all of you remember, we were discussing last time on Vidya and Avidya. In Vidya, we saw the knowledge about the self-realization. The knowledge about Krishna is very, very important. Knowing that Krishna, the knowledge which brings a person to a conclusion that the Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Vedesha Sarver Aham Eva Vedyo is a very important part of a Vidya. Then we saw a part of Avidya. The avidya, one part we saw is a prohibited thing, or the avidya, which is exclusively related to sense gratification, that is to maintain this material body, mind, and senses. And then another part of avidya is that knowledge which is from the Vedas, which also, which is uh, not coming to conclusion that Krishna is the supreme person of Godhead. And then we saw Vedavadaratas in that. And then also there are people with the self-made gods. This is a very unfortunate situation of the people who have studied Vedas, but then they come to a conclusion, and they are the most dangerous people. They come to conclusion that they are the supreme, that themselves are the god. They themselves consider the god, and then they find no need of worshipping other god, because they start worshipping themselves and they glorify themselves as a supreme lord. And unfortunately, while doing all these things, they have to worship, some rich men for some money, and then they consider that God is entrapped with Maya. It's a very unfortunate situation. And there are Vedavadaratas. They consider themselves very, very learned. They know Vedas and everything, and they are unfortunately diverted from the purpose of the Vedas. And there are many other things. There are a number of things, qualities which are mentioned. So the avidya, that is which is under influence of Maya, and this is something which destroys matter, and the vidya which destroys the matter. But then avidya is the one which creates the matter, or which entangles a person into a matter. So we saw that in the detail, and that explains that how people who worship avidya, or the culture of science, they are the one who engage in the material life. And then there are other people, they are worst, they are considered as worst, who are engrossed in great ignorance, are those who are engaged in the culture of misguided knowledge. So there is a person who may be appearing to be received a knowledge, but then he is very much misguided. And that's why two kinds of people are explained, Vedavadaratas and self-made God. They consider themselves God. They are called as a Maya Apruta Jnana. That knowledge which is deviating a person. So there are people who are engrossed into material sense gratification. They are in ignorance. But there are very unfortunate people who know the knowledge of Vedas but consider themselves as a supreme lord, or they consider themselves very scholarly person, and then they reject the authority of Krishna, and they don't come to a conclusion that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So this is what we discussed last time. Now today we are going to see what are the results of Vidya and Avidya. So we saw the first thing, one result is derived from the culture of knowledge. So the wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge. And then second is that different result is derived from a culture of nescience, that is avidya. So there are two different results which are reserved. One result is from the culture of knowledge, that is vidya. Another result which comes from the culture of nescience, that is avidya. So we are going to see today there are different culture of knowledge which we are going to see. So further, Prabhupada is explaining that the vidya, which is also explained in Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, from verse number 8 to 12. There are qualities of a person who is wise are explained. Or and then next is there is the explanation of about the avidya, which is also explained. So we are going to see the different qualities which are explained by Srila Prabhupada in this verse number 13 of Srimad Bhagavatam from 8 to 12. So there are different qualities which are also explained, which is of a person of who is wise. Person who is that wise person? A person in the culture of knowledge, that is in Vidya. And there is also a description about the problems a person has to face who is in avidya, or who is completely bound in the material world. So Prabhupada is also explaining that a person who is bound in a material world, what happens to that person, or a person who is in avidya, what is the result a person obtains? So result of a knowledge and results of a avidya. Vidya and avidya, both will be discussed. And how to attain a vidya, that is also Prabhupada is very strongly emphasizing, and that is a dhira purush from whom one can attain a vidya. So quickly we'll go through the purport. As advised in the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, 13.8.12. This is a chapter which talks about Kshetrajna, the enjoyer and the that's the topic. So this whole chapter is a very philosophical chapter which talks about the Jiva, Ishvara, and Prakriti. All those three things are explained very nicely in this chapter. So here Prabhupada is talking about a person as advised in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, 13.8.8 to 12. One should culture a knowledge in the following ways. So how a person can attain a knowledge. This is also explained in the fourth chapter, last verse, 4.29, I believe, 39, where Prabhupada is talking about how one can receive a knowledge. Tadvidhi pranipatena, there is a vidhi which is given. Tada vidhi, that there is a process. What is that vidhi? Pranipatena, by surrendering. Pariprashnena, by enquiring. And tadvidhi pranipatena, pariprashnena, sevaya, and by rendering service with the humility, with the service attitude. One can, what happens a person? Tadvidhi pranipatena, pariprashnena, sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnana. That person will have drishtanta. That person will be able to see knowledge. That person will be able to understand the culture of knowledge. So, tadvidhi pranipatena, tadvidhi pranipatena, pariprashnena, sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnana. Jnaninas tattvadarshina, and that knowledgeable person becomes very much realized, revealed in the knowledge. Jnaninas tattvadarshina, he can see tattvataha, everything as it is, everything in a realistic way. So that's why here also the person who is having a culture of knowledge, that is vidya, what all qualities are seen in that person, or how one can nurture, how one should have a culture of knowledge, that is explained by Prabhupada. First, one should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give a proper respect to others. One should not pose himself as a religionist simply for a name and fame. So please remember, in the previous verse, we saw a person who is Vedavadarata, who is expert in Vedic knowledge, But then that person is arrogant, that person thinks himself God, that person does not respect others, and that person is deviated from the path of God, disobey or neglect the authority of Acharya, interpret the Vedas. All those qualities of a Veda Vadartas are explained. But now here, those quality or those person who can attain this knowledge, who can attain a Vidya are explained. Or one who has attained Vidya, what all good qualities are seen in that person. That is explained here. So, it is said that the tree which bears a lot of fruits, what happens to that tree? That tree bends down. We will hardly see any tree who is having a lot of, he is not arrogant. But unfortunately, human being, as soon as he gets some knowledge, some Aishwarya, that may be beauty, wealth, knowledge, strength, but especially when it comes to knowledge, that person is not humble, he becomes arrogant. And that's why the Veda Vadratas are condemned in the previous verse. But here, Prabhupada is now telling the very divine qualities of a person who is gentleman or a person who is having a knowledge. And that's why to receive a knowledge, the vidhi, the process which is said, tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena seva. Another verse comes in about the Pandita, about a very knowledgeable person, a person who is having a knowledge about Krishna, self-realized person in knowledge when it is glorified. It is said, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Swarva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. While explaining this, a very important factor is every word here is very important. It begins with Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Vidya will lead to Vinaya. It will lead to a humility. And Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, that person is full of humility. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini, Shuni Chaiva Shupakecha. And that's why, because he is very humble enough and he has received a knowledge in a very right way, and he can see Paramatma situated in everybody's heart, he sees Brahmana, or the dog, or a dog eater, or a chandala, anyone, Brahmana, guy, cow, elephant, everyone, Brahmana Gavihastini Shunichara Supakeja, Pandita, that Pandita, Samadarshina, he's a Samadarshi. He can equally see. But the very beginning, first quality of that person is Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Vinaya means humility. So that's why Prabhupada is also explaining here that person should become perfect gentleman and learn to give a proper respect to others. Second, one should not pose himself a religionist simply for the name and fame. There are many people who will find just for the sake of getting some fame, getting some name, getting some money, respect, and get their work done, people show themselves religious. And then that has become like a business, unfortunately. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the action of his body, by the thought of his mind, or by his word. In the same chapter, third chapter, when ahimsa is spoken, or in the other chapter, 11th chapter, I believe, yeah, where ahimsa is spoken, Prabhupada gives very nice understanding there. Prabhupada is saying that ahimsa means non-violence, means what? One should not become a source of anxiety to others, by action of his body, by thoughts, or by mind or words. So ahimsa, it does not mean that you go and kill someone or hit someone or use some astra shastra. Ahimsa also means not to give anxiety to a person by our action and by our bodily movement, by our thought process or words. That's a very, very important thing. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that person does not do hinsa, or that does not put person does not put anybody else into anxiety. One should learn to forbearance even in the face of provocation from others. If you have, all of you have studied Nectar of Instruction in the preface or really introduction, Prabhupada is giving a very nice statement. Prabhupada is saying the greatness of a person is estimated by the ability to tolerate provoking situation. So there will be a provocation in this world by varieties of things, by Maya, by people around us, by opposite sex, or by some alluring things will come, some provocation will come. And the person who is a great person, the greatness of a person is estimated by what? Ability to tolerate that provoking situation. So here one should learn forbearance even in the face of provocation from others. So tolerance is explained here. So we see that respect, or having being very religious towards Krishna, not only work from name and fame. Then there is not giving anxiety and doing hinsa of someone. or one should avoid the provocation and develop a tolerance. That is explained here. One should learn to avoid a duplicity in his dealing with others. No duplicity. One has to be very simple. A Vaishnava is a very simple-hearted. We have to be like a child, innocent child. Who the child recently we are conducting a yagya course, and very nice. We were able to see amazing uh, psychological changes in a person's life. There are children who are also learning a yagya course, and there are adults who are learning a yagya course. When we are teaching something to children, it is so easy to teach them. Now, somebody say how it is easy to teach children. It is easy because children are not complicated. They don't, there in the Sanskrit, there is, when you are pronouncing, there's udatta and anudatta. These two swaras are there. And there are multiple swaras, but their main focus is on udatta and anudatta. Udatta is going up, anudatta is going down. So when we are explaining this to kids, they said, okay, fine, we will follow. And we can see that they are able to chant so fluently and they're so nice. When it comes to elderly adults, when they're saying that udatta, anudatta, he's going and checking which is udatta, which is anudatta, and then why it is udatta, and then how a sandhi vigraha happens, and how sandhi happens. All those complications he's getting into it, and he's taking a lot of time to understand and learn, and that's why he's not very focused also, and he has multiple other things. But in the case of children, they are very focused. Why? Because their heart is not duplicious. Their heart does not have malice. And unfortunately, because a living entity, as he grows, there's a lot of duplication in his heart. And that's why when Prabhupada says we have to be like a child, we have to have that innocence for Krishna Prema. That's very, very important. So here it is said, a person who's in knowledge, one should learn to avoid a duplicity. He's not duplicitous in dealing with others. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization. One must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask the relevant questions. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashana sevaya, to a spiritual master. One should find a spiritual master and surrender his life to him. Then, in order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined with the revealed scriptures, following the four regulative principles minimum. And there are other important regulative principles to be followed. So to begin with these four regulative principles and slowly following other regulative principles is very important. One must be fixed in the tenet of revealed scripture. So it's good to stay, in the boundary of a revealed scriptures. Does not jump onto many and get confused. One should completely refrain from a practice which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. So, Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam. A very nice teaching which is given by Srila Prabhupada in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which says about Anukulyasya Sankalpa and Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Anukul, whatever is Anukul, what is favorable, accepted. And what is unfavorable? Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam. So, what is Anukul, one can do a Sankalpa of that. And what is not Anukul, that is whatever is not favorable, then that should be rejected. Pratikulyasya Varjanam, that should be completely rejected. So here it is saying, in order to approach a platform solution, one must follow the regulative principle. One must be fixed in a tenet of a revealed scripture. So when I explain this, it's very important that we stay in the boundary of a revealed scriptures. We should not just jump into anything and everything and try to study. One should completely refrain from the practice which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. Yeah, we were discussing about it. One should completely refrain from the practice which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. So here a person who is in knowledge is always aspiring for self-realization. So our focus has to be only self-realization, nothing else. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. So this body is not all in all. Krishna is everything. It's very important teaching to understand. And he should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body. A person who is in knowledge does not see, he can see the presence of, he can see that how this body is maintained and operated by the soul. And that's why considering taking care of soul is the most important priority. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of a repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. Hare Krishna. Just 1 minute. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of a repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use. So he's a person who is in knowledge, and that person knows about the birth, old age, disease, death. These are the problems of a material world, and they are as long as one has a material body, those problems will always there, and there is no use of making plans to get rid of these miseries of a material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. So one has to aspire for a spiritual life. One has to aspire for a self-realization. One should not be attached to more than a necessity of life required for a spiritual advancement. This is a very important thing again to understand. That person is not over collecting. Atyahara prayasasya prajalpo niyamagra is the teaching. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. This is again the asakti has to be controlled. One should not be happy or distressed over the desirable and undesirable, knowing that such a feelings are just created by the mind. Matra sparshasthu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama payino nitya tam stitishasva bharata. So, distress and desire dvandvas will always be there. Happiness, matra sparshasthu kaunteya. By the sparsha, we understand that there is heat and cold. Similarly, there is sukha and dukkha, which will come and go again and again. What a person has to do? Tolerate. Tam stitishasva bharata. One has to tolerate. So here also, one should not be happy or distressed over a desirable and undesirable. So dvandvas will always be there in the life. Such feelings are created by mind. And many times the dvandvas are nothing but the created by mind. One should become an unalloyed devotee of personality of Godhead Sri Krishna and serve him with a rapt attention. One should develop a linking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture. And one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. So this is again important. The person, he should. This is spoken about. Finding a place where you can peacefully practice your Krishna consciousness and develop our spiritual culture more and more, and not just surrounded with the materialistic people. That's completely prohibited. One should become a scientist of or a philosopher and conduct a research into spiritual knowledge. So that's why we are learning this Bhakti Shastri course, where we can see or become experts in spiritual knowledge, and we can go on studying in a depth about the spiritual knowledge, recognizing that the spiritual knowledge is permanent, where as the material bondage ends with the death of the body. The spiritual knowledge is all in all, and material world is nothing. Material knowledge is going to go finish. So that's why spiritual life is very important, and this spiritual knowledge will continue. Then giving importance to that. These 18 items combined to form a gradual process by which a real knowledge can be developed. Except for these, all other methods are considered to be the category of science. So whatever is explained is a vidya, and rest everything is avidya. It's very clear. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, a great acharya, maintained that all forms of material knowledge are merely external features of a illusory energy, and that by culturing them, one becomes no better than an ass. The same principle is found here in a Sri Isopanisad. By advancement of a material knowledge, modern man is simply being converted into an ass. So this is criticized here. How a person, because of nescience, because of lack of knowledge, or because of ignorance, is nothing but he becomes an ass. This same principle is found here in the Shri Isopanisad. Okay. Some materialistic politicians is in a spiritual guise decry the present system of civilization as satanic. But unfortunately, satanic. Unfortunately, they don't care about the culture of real knowledge as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Thus, they cannot change the satanic situation. So, the situation of the world, which is like a haunted situation, or which is like, very wrong or very going. So unfortunately, some material politicians, they will try to focus on that, but the main focus of the leader or politician has to be towards the culture of real knowledge. So what we are trying to see here is the result of a knowledge and result of the science. So here the previously the result of knowledge are explained, that how person becomes a philosopher, or he finds out the seclusion place. He's very rapt in attention to have the supreme person of Godhead. He's humble, he's respectful, he's non-violent, and there are so many other good qualities which are explained about the person who is in knowledge, and person who is not in knowledge is like an ass. That's what is explained. Okay, can somebody read ahead? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah, should I start? In the modern society, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient and pays no respect to elderly men. Due to the wrong type of education being imparted in our universities, boys all over the world are giving their elders headache. Thus, Sri Isopanisad very strongly warns that the culture of the nations is different from that of the knowledge. The universities are so to speak center of nations only. Consequently, scientists are busy discovering lethal weapons to wipe out all the existence of other countries. University students today are not given instructions in the regulative principles of Brahmacharya, celibate student life, nor do they have any faith in any scriptural injunctions. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name and fame only, and not for the sake of practical actions. Thus, there is animosity not only in the social and political fields, but in the field of religion as well. Nationalism has developed in different parts of the world due to the cultivation of nations by the general people. No one considers that this tiny earth is just a lump of matter floating in the immeasurable space along with many other lumps. In comparison to the vastness of space, these material lumps are like dust particles in the air. Because God has kindly made these lumps of matter complete in themselves. They are perfectly equipped with all necessities for floating in space. The drivers of our spaceships may be very proud of their achievements, but they do not know consider the supreme driver of these greater, more gigantic spaceships called planets. These are innumerable suns and innumerable planetary systems also. As infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, these small creatures are trying to dominate these unlimited planets. Thus, we take repeated birth and death, are generally frustrated by old age and disease. The span of human life is scheduled for about 100 years, although it is gradually decreasing to the 20 or 30 years. Thanks to the culture of nations, befooled men have created their own nations within this planets in order to grasp sense enjoyment more effectively for these few years. Such foolish peoples draw various plans to render national demarcations perfectly as task that is totally impossible. Yet for this purpose, each and every nation has become a source of anxiety for others. More than 50% of nations' energy is devoted to defense measures and thus spoiled. No one cares for the cultivation of real knowledge, yet people are falsely proud of being advanced in both material and spiritual knowledge. Sri Ishopanishad warns us
Okay,
for
ma'am.
this.
We'll, we'll,
Yes.
So here, Prabhupada is explaining about what is happening with a person who is in avidya. The avidya makes a person like an ass, and then Prabhupada is also talking about the youth. Prabhupada is saying that the youth is no longer respectful towards their teachers and elders. Universities are nothing but they're becoming the center of avidya, center of nescience. Nothing is taught in the university. Prabhupada went to MIT, and there Prabhupada asked, do you have a department which is talking about what life after death, or any department how to deal with the death? So there is no department like that, or there is no department of a self-realization. So they don't talk about this. Universities are just talking about avidya, and then scientists have become scientists. They become busy discovering the weapons, and then they're just fighting. And that's what Prabhupada is talking about, the countries just wasting their half of their money on the fighting and protecting each other. And then the just in the maximum, the it is something, the India's more than a 50% budget is only for the army and the air force and the defense related, more than a 50%. And then rest of the 50% is for the infrastructure and XYZ, whatever other things. So unfortunately, so much wastage is happening in the countries, and then all the scientists and all intelligent, knowledgeable people are busy doing research of finding out the weapons and the best bombs they can make. And students are not trained for brahmacharya syllabus. This is something which is very important. Every student should be trained for a brahmacharya. That's unfortunately not happening, and that's why so many uh, unwanted things are happening. And they have because of not having this Brahminical culture or brahmacharya following, or not teaching anywhere about the Vidya, the students have no faith on the scriptural injunctions. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name, fame, and not for the practical action. So many schools you will find, they'll have so many prayers, but then they ultimately don't lead to anything. I remember going to school and, in the beginning chanting so many prayers, Atharva Shirsha or Saraswati Vandana, or but then it was never taught in a school that, ultimately you have to aspire for a self-realization, being a human. It was never taught. It is just for the sake of name, fame, things are taught. And then Prabhupada very often, he criticizes about the nationalism and these different isms. They are developed, and then ultimately the animosity is growing. People are just becoming animalistic, and this is all is the effect as the result of avidya. That's what Prabhupada will explain. Okay, further, Shri Ishopanishad, can somebody else do it?
Sri Isopanisad, Sri Isopanisad warns us of this faulty type of education, and the Bhagavad Gita gives instruction as to development of real knowledge. This mantra states that the instruction of Vidya, knowledge, must be acquired from a Dhira. A Dhira is a one who is not disturbed by material illusions. No one can be undisturbed unless he is perfectly spiritually realized, at which time one neither hankers nor laments for anything. A Dhira realizes that the material body and the mind he has acquired by chance through material association are but foreign elements. Therefore, he simply makes the best use of bad bargain. The material body and the minds are bad bargain for spiritual living entity. The living entity has actual function in the living spiritual world, but this material world is dead. As long as the living spiritual sparks manipulate the dead lumps of matter, the dead world appears to be a living world. Actually, it is the living souls, the part and parcel of the supreme living being, one who move the world. The Dhiras have come to know all these facts by hearing them from superior authorities and have realized this knowledge by following the regulative principles. To follow the regulative principles, one must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. The transcendental message and regulative principles come down from the spiritual masters to the disciple. Such knowledge doesn't come in the hazardous way of nascent education. One has one can become a dhira only by submissively hearing from a bona fide spiritual master. Arjuna, for example, became a dhira by submissively hearing from Lord Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Thus, the perfect disciple must be like Arjuna, and the spiritual master must be as good as Lord Himself. This is the process of learning Vidya, knowledge, from the Dhira, the undisturbed. And Adhira, one who has not undergone the training of a Dhira, can't be instructive leader. Modern politicians who pose themselves as a Dhira are actually Adhiras, and one can't expect knowledge from them. They are simply busy seeing to their own remuneration in dollars and cents. How then can they lead the mass of people to the right path of self-realization? Thus, one must hear submissively from a dhira in order to attain actual education.
Hare Krishna. So, Prabhupada is, Prabhupada after discussing about what are the results of avidya and how avidya is, actually fooling the world. Avidya befools the jiva to create a national democrations, and the jiva is just investigating and finding out something. Half of the money of the country just going in defense, and there's a lot of frustration towards jiva. There's so much of dominance of a material energy over the jiva, and then and because of this avidya, person is full of pride, person is full of ego, and then because of that, his life is frustrated. And that's why a person should take shelter of Vidya. And how a person can attain a Vidya, that Prabhupada very nicely explained. Prabhupada is explaining that by becoming Dhira. So there is the Dhira Janapriya Priyakaro Nirmatsaro Pujito. The Shada Goswami ka Ashtakam glorifies six Goswamis that how they were Dhira Purushas. They were very, very sense controlled. So, Dhira Purusha is the glorification of our Goswamis, and those Goswamis who are so learned in the scriptures and who had just not being learned in the scripture, who had such an intense faith that Krishna is the Supreme Person of Godhead and we have to attain that Krishna faith. And then they practice so sincerely. So, those are the examples of a pure devotee who are, Dhira Purushas. There is another example, the best of the Dhira Purushas is explained about Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is that sense control of Vishnu. So, Lord Shiva, he was approached by Bhuvana Sundari, the most beautiful woman of this whole creation, of this whole material creation, is that Parvati, Durga Mata. And when Durga Mata, she approached Parvati, she approached Lord Shiva for a marriage, for a union. She went very close and started touching his private parts. But then, while doing this, Lord Shiva was undisturbed. He was not at all agitated. It is just difficult. Now I'm explaining about whom Bhuvana Sundari. She's the most beautiful lady of this whole creation, I'm saying. So if she can be so beautiful and she's trying to agitate Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was undisturbed at all. He was not at all disturbed. So that is why he is glorified as Dhira Purush, the topmost of Dhira. So becoming Dhira is very, very important. What is becoming Dhira means? A person has to have control over his emotion. He has to have control. He should be very tolerant, and he should have control over senses and the mind. He does not listen to the demands of mind and senses, but follows the scriptures very nicely. So Prabhupada explained, a Dhira is a spiritually realized person who is not disturbed by illusion, hankering, and lamentation. Shoka, Moha, and Bhaya. He is not Shoka, Moha, Bhayapoha. He is not at all disturbed by these three things. Bhagavad explains a person who is Dhira is free from, he's completely undisturbed by illusion, hankering, and lamentation. He is not at all disturbed by these things. A Dhira realizes that the material body and the mind acquired through the material association are foreign elements, and he utilizes them by making the best use of a bad bargain. So there are these entities, there are these things which is material body, mind. It has to be rightly used. That's what a Dhira person means. And the Vidya must be acquired by hearing from a Dhira. So those who are Dhira Purusha, from them, the Shabda Pramana, we should accept the knowledge. The Dhira attends and realizes knowledge by submissive hearing. So the person who is Dhira is submissive in his hearing from a superior authority, following the regulatory principles. He follows the regulatory principle very sincerely, taking shelter of a bona fide guru. Example, Arjuna heard from Krishna. Prabhupada explained that Krishna is that perfect teacher and Arjuna is that perfect Dhira student, student who is very sensible. So teacher and student both need to be really good. And a person who is adhira, who is not a dhira, one who has not undergone the training of a dhira can be an instructive leader. One cannot expect a perfect knowledge from a modern politicians who are adhira. And how can a selfish people busy seeing their own remuneration, interests, and lead to the people of the right path for self-realization? So this person, Prabhupada is explaining here, how then can they lead the mass of people to the right path of self-realization? Thus one must hear submissively from a dhira to in order to attain the actual education. So to attain a vidya, a person has to be dhira, and person should hear from a dhira purusha and become a dhira. So this is what is the result of vidya and avidya. A person in the vidya situation is a dhira purusha. He can attain Krishna. And a person who is in the person who is not a dhira, he is adhira. Or a person who is engrossed into avidya, so is actually nothing but an ass. He's called here as he becomes like an ass. But a person with vidya, that is a person who is dhira, is a humble, is a prideless, is non-violence, is tolerant, simple, and so many other things. So the results of vidya and avidya, we saw it in detail. Any question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, in this mantra, 18 points are given about Vidya, and I want to ask question about point number 17. It is,
20, okay.
yes, one should develop a liking for a residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture, and one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. But such place is difficult nowadays. So how should we do in this situation?
Okay. So proper is to say that you have no associations and create association. So if you don't have that place, then you should create that place wherever you are. That's possible. So we should try to preach around our places and make people devotee. So those people who are also devotee and you are also devotee can calmly practice. Otherwise, try to situate yourself in a position or place where you can actually practice spiritual life calm. So in the house also you can create a place where you can peacefully. Otherwise, in the house also, if there are people who are not practicing Krishna consciousness can also create havoc. And that's why we should, wherever and whichever place, seclusion is recommended here. And that seclusion or ekanta bhakti is not immediately to be practiced. It is a slow and steadily we practice our bhakti in whatever situation where our eventually our mind and senses are controlled. Seclusion or the private place or the place where living in a place in a seclusion is later to be done. But at this point, we should find a place which is favorable. Otherwise, sometime with the I remember, one of my friend called me for a study to his home, and I stayed in a place which was very very quiet and place in my childhood. But when I went there, it was his house was exactly on the road. And then I was continuously seeing the horns and vehicles going around and so many things happening. I couldn't study even for a minute because I always lived in that whole environment. So the peaceful environment or the environment full of goodness always help a person to grow or practice or study to gather a knowledge or to practice a spiritual life. And that's why here it is recommended living in a place favorable for a spiritual culture. So we should find a place. If that place is not there, we can create that place wherever we are. And the best way we can do that, deal with this, is that Yanisha Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagruti Sayami. So that this shloka in Bhagavad Gita explains that is the time for the sadhus to wake up is the time for a person to sleep. And time for a sadhu to sleep is a common man's time for wake up. So that's why Brahma Muhurta time is a place, a very, very favorable time. And that time the whole world is sleeping and you can very peacefully practice your Krishna consciousness. Okay, bro? If you don't have a possibility of having an effect.
Yes, bro. Thank
That's
you.
why many devotees move to the temples, close to temple. And there are opportunities close to a temple, so we can try to stay there. If not, then create a place.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Anything else? Satyavat Guru, you had some questions?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay. So our Saurabh Prabhu is recently initiated by His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, and his initiated name is Satyavrata Prabhu. Am I right, Prabhu?
Prabhuji.
So we should congratulate Prabhuji by once chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Ram,
Ram Ram,
Hare
Hare.
Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you, devotees. Prabhuji.
Okay, any other question? Okay. So
Hare
you
Krishna,
said,
Prabhuji. Regarding that 17 point, I have another one question also, Prabhuji. See,
okay.
Prabhuji, like in my home, like it's very favorable for doing practicing spiritual, like doing chanting, hearing lectures, reading books. Like it's very favorable, Prabhuji. But some material conditions, that's not good. Like from my father, my father or mother, that their they materially got some problem, and because of that problem, we are like now, Prabhuji, like in material world, like due to material things, we will fight against each other, Prabhuji. Like in that condition, what we have to do, Prabhuji?
You can surely approach your counselor and guide who can guide you, help you for this thing. Another important thing, what we can do, like in Marathi, we say that Gharogari Maticha Suli. So every home, you will surely find something is always happening. So मात्रा स्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखदा आगमा पायिनो नित्य ताम स्थितिक्षस्व भारत. So that is the instruction given by Krishna to every living entity. Tam Stitikshasva Bharat, that learn to tolerate. And a devotee, he learns to tolerate. If you see the qualities above also, the tolerance is very specifically, Dvandva, and tolerance is specifically mentioned there. The person is in the knowledge, is free from the dualities. Happiness and distress will come. Happy moments and the sad moments will always come in the life. So don't get overexcited when there is a happy moment. Don't feel very sad and morose when there is a sad moment. And whenever you have to tolerate, better to tolerate than fight. So we should learn to tolerate. And if Krishna has provided some better facility for us, we become grateful. And that gratitude, we actually don't fight. We actually don't compare. We don't actually get into complications.
No, Prabhuji, being a devotee, like we will not expect this material things, Prabhuji. But some other persons, they have intention to like doing bad things, and that how we can tolerate, Prabhuji.
Okay, this particular point of Trunadapi Sunishana, Tarorapi Sunishana. So this is about the humility and tolerance. So when it is about the humility and tolerance, okay, so what I follow personally in my life, that I'll explain, you can always approach your spiritual guides and mentors. Where the humility is surely to be expressed in front of our devotees. We have to be humble, and towards our immediate elders and the very respectful elders, we have to be humble enough. There is no doubt about it. And when they are chastising, correcting us, I'm talking about the superiors and the devotees around us, we can always be humble enough, because that is for our better practice of spiritual life. We can always accept it. When it is about the swabhiman, I'm not talking about the ego, I'm talking about the self-esteem. When it is about the self-esteem, swabhiman, if somebody is trying to disturb our swabhiman, there is no need of tolerating it. We can retaliate or react to it. But when we are retaliating or reacting to it, being a devotee, we know better way of retaliating and reacting to it. We should try to develop because that is the quality of a devotee. Arjuna, when he had to retaliate and react, it is said that when the Mahabharata war started, that time Arjuna shot some arrows. Before in the beginning of the war, he shot some arrows towards all the elders in the Kuru dynasty, and all those arrows went and fell at their feet. So he was seeking a blessings from the opposition party by throwing an arrow, that please bless me so that I can win this war. And all those elders, they said Tathastu, and they blessed him that time. So that's how he reacted. So he had a humble attitude. Like, Satya has to be spoken. The truth has to be spoken. Some places where there is a fight for the property, or, some issues related, where you have to speak about the truth. You cannot deny. But Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat. That is a principle a devotee has. He speaks the truth, but he speaks truth very politely and with the Priyam Bruyat. It's very favorable manner or very acceptable manner. So when somebody is coming and fighting, or somebody doing something wrong with you, we stand steadily. We are firm about it. But that firmness is with the politeness. That firmness is with the good qualities of a devotee. So whenever we are presenting, we present it very nicely. With firmness, we stand for the truth. But we don't unnecessarily get into agitated moment and give some bad word and fight and criticize and so many things. We are standing for the truth. We are standing for our self-esteem. No problem with it. There you don't have to say, no, whatever you want to do, you come and beat me, kill me. No, we will stand for it. If you need to take astra and shastra in the hand to protect, that is also required. But then till that time, whatever better way we can do it. Okay, Abhishek?
Thank you, Prabhuji. No, Prabhuji, while dealing with the devotees, that's very easy thing, Prabhuji. Dealing with the devotees, staying in the association, Prabhuji.
I get it. That's why I said that if I told you about the dealing with the devotees, we have to be humble. But dealing with the outsiders who are coming on our self-esteem, or who are disturbing who are like atatais sometimes. So we stand for that firmly. There you can, but then when you are fighting, it is obviously, that, "Arey, kaisa devotee hai tum? What kind of devotee you are speaking bad words, and you come in, we become so aggressive. You don't need to become aggressive. We are firm that what I am doing is right, and I will stand for the truth. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So that is not from Vidya part of perspective, what I'm trying to tell you, neither Vidya or Avidya. This was a different direction, because maybe a practical application of the 17th point which comes in the Vidya was discussed. Okay, let's go to mantra number 11. Now we are going to see the balance of Vidya and Avidya. So Krishna initially told, the Isopanisad in the verse number 9 talks about, yes, Vidya and Avidya. There is Vidya and Avidya. Vidya is dealing with dealing with matter. And it helps a person to come out of matter. Avidya is person is engrossed into matter. So after describing about the Vidya and Avidya, further explain about the results of Vidya and Avidya. What are the results? So those all results are explained here. Now, further, very interestingly, it is explaining that how both the things are required. The Vidya is also required and Avidya is also required. And how should one balance between Vidya and Avidya? That is also very nicely explained. So let's go to the verse number 11. Vidyam cha vidyam chaya. Tad vidyam chaya. Tad vedobhyan saha avidyaya murtum tivya vidyaya mritam rushrute. Vidyaya mritam rushrute. Only one who can learn, only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of a transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So it is talking about the process of avidya and a transcendental knowledge, that is vidya. So vidya and avidya, both knowledge are important. So both the things go side by side. And that person who studies these things side by side can transcend the influence of a birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. Now, so much Vidya and Avidya discussion we had. In that, Avidya is very much criticized, but still the knowledge of Avidya is also very important. Just to make it very simple, the Avidya deals with the body and Vidya deals with the soul. So soul and body together can help each other, and a person, that is a living entity, that is a soul, can transcend this birth of the repeated birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. And that's why both combined together is very important. And that's why both the knowledges are important. It is not just one knowledge is important. It's just not Vidya which is important. Knowledge of Avidya is also important. But knowledge of Avidya is not all in all. That is also very important. Vidya is knowledge of self-realization. Avidya is knowledge of knowledge which is related to this body, or which is related to the which is whatever is connected to this body or maintenance of this body is spoken about avidya. Okay, so one who can learn the process of nescience. So they go hand in hand, they go together. Both the things should be learned. That is important. The process of nescience and that of the transcendental knowledge. Side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. That person can attain the moksha. Okay, so the first thing talks about one who can learn both Vidya and Avidya, that is Jnana and the Vidya and Avidya, and can transcend repeated birth of death, but can transcend the repeated birth and death and attain immortality or liberation. So here, Prabhupada is going to stress on Avidya as karma and Vidya as Jnana. So karma and Jnana both are important. That is what Prabhupada is very nicely explained. So let's understand karma and jnana. Uh, when the person is living, he cannot live without a karma. The karmas are performed with the body. And because of his karma, he either gets to enjoy or he suffers. He gets a pious or sinful credits. And because of that, a person is engrossed. So many times, this avidya, which is related to body, perform because in this process of learning avidya or because of the avidya, a person performs wrong or good activity and he is engrossed into it. And then with the help of knowledge, what he can do, he can cut it. He can cut the attachments with the knowledge. He can break the cycle of birth and death. So that's why this mutually jnana and karma is very, very important. And that will help a person for a liberation, that help a person to break the cycle of birth and death. Okay, let's read the purport.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Since the creation of the material world, everyone has been trying to attain a permanent life. But the laws of the nature are so cruel that no one has been able to avoid the health of the hand of death. No one wants to die, nor does anyone wants to become old or diseased. The law of nature, however, does not allow anyone immunity from old age. Old age, disease, or death, nor has the advancement of material knowledge solved these problems. Material science can discover the nuclear bomb to accelerate the process of death, but it cannot discover anything that can protect man from the cruel hands of old age, disease, and death. From the Puranas, we learn of the activities of Hiranyakashipu, a king who was very much advanced materially, wanting to conquer the cruel death by his material acquisitions and the strength of his nescience. He underwent a type of meditation so severe that the inhabitants of all planetary systems became disturbed by his mystic powers. He forced the creator of the universe, the demigod Brahma, to come down to him. He then asked Brahma for the benediction of becoming Amara, by which one does not die. Brahma said that he could not award the benediction because even he, the material creator who rules all planets, is not Amara, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.17. Brahma lives a long life, but that does not mean he is immortal.
Okay. So here, this particular verse, as I began with explaining about the jnana and karma. So the vidya part deals with the knowledge and avidya part deals with the karma. So this potency of vidya and avidya ultimately comes from maya. And then maya is under the influence of the chit potency and ladini potency and chit potency. So the chit potency, so Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha, Sanatan, Chit is full of knowledge, and Ananda is full of bliss. So here we are dealing with the chit potency, that is knowledge potency. So the both the things, Vidya and Avidya, are coming because of the influence of chit potency. And that's why they both are very, very important. We cannot avoid it. So if a person is standing and his shadow is there, so shadow is not all in all. Shadow is not a person, but because shadow is there, person is surely there. So similarly, if there is a avidya, avidya is surely there, and avidya and chividya both come from a chitta potency, and that chitta potency is full of knowledge. That potency is full of knowledge, and that's why we cannot avoid one of them. It is very, very important. So that's why Prabhupada is when he's explaining this particular shloka which is explaining, that balance has to be there. That's very, very important. So while doing this balance, what helps this balance is to break the cycle of birth and death. And that's why here Prabhupada begins with explaining that no one can escape death. Death is going to be there. So when death is, there are people who are trying to have a permanent life, but then laws of nature are very cruel, and then that cannot avoid the old age and disease and death and birth. It will go on. The cycle will go on. So one has to break the cycle. So that material knowledge cannot solve the problem, but can only accelerate them. So, the material science is like that. And then Brahma's life is explained by Prabhupada. Brahma lives a long life, but he is not immortal. So, while studying this, Brahma is said that he could not award a benediction. So, when the demons were asking Brahmaji about awarding a Amaratva, he said even he is not Amar, he is not immortal. He is not mortal entity. He's not immortal. He's a mortal. He is also not going to live. He does not have Amaratva. So, Brahma may live for a very, very long time, but then still he has to quit that position of a Brahma. So similarly, nobody in this world which can, they can live for them. But then they have opportunity to break this cycle of birth and death. And that birth and death can be, that person can break by accepting vidya, knowledge of God, the Supreme Lord. That's very, very important. So both the things go hand in hand, and that's why the death cannot be. No one can escape the death, but then he can avoid the cycle of birth and death completely. Okay, go ahead next.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hiranya means gold and Kashipu means soft bed. This cunning gentleman Hiranyakashipu was interested in these two things, money and woman, and he wanted to enjoy them by becoming immortal. He asked from Brahma many benedictions in hopes of indirectly fulfilling his desire to become immortal. Since Brahma told him that he could not grant the gift of immortality, Hiranyakashipu requested that he not be killed by any man, animal, god, or any other living being within the 84 lakh species. He also asked that he not die on land, in the air, or water, or by any weapon. In this way, Hiranyakashipu foolishly thought these guarantees would save him from death. Ultimately, however, although Brahma granted him all these benedictions, he was killed by the personality of Godhead in the form of Narsimha, the Lord's half lion, half man incarnation, and no weapon was used to kill him, for he was killed by the Lord's nails. Nor was he killed on the land, in the air, or in the water, for he was killed on the lap of that wonderful living being, Narsimha, who was beyond his conception. The whole point here is that even Hiranyakashipu, the most powerful of materialists, could not become deathless by his various plans. What then can be accomplished by the tiny Hiranyakashipus of today, whose plans are thwarted from moment to moment? Sri Isopanisad instructs us not to make one-sided attempts to win the struggle for existence. Everyone is struggling hard for existence, but the laws of material nature are so hard and fast that they do not allow anyone to surpass them. In order to attain a permanent life, one must be prepared to go back to Godhead. The process by which one goes back to Godhead is a different branch of knowledge, and it has to be learned from the revealed Vedic scriptures such as the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. To become happy in this life and attain a permanent blissful life after leaving this material body, one must study this sacred literature and obtain transcendental knowledge. The conditioned living being has forgotten his eternal relationship with God and has mistakenly accepted the temporary place of his birth as all in all. The Lord has kindly delivered the above mentioned scriptures in India and other scriptures in other countries to remind the forgetful human being that his home is not here in this material world. The living being is a spiritual entity and he can be happy only by returning to his spiritual home. From his kingdom, the personality of Godhead sends his bona fide servants to propagate this message by which one can return to Godhead, and sometimes the Lord comes himself to do this work. Since all living beings are his beloved sons, his parts and parcels, God is more sorry than we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with the dead matter. Intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and engage themselves in the culture of Vidya or transcendental knowledge. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge, and a human being who does not take advantage of this opportunity is called a Naradhama, the lowest of human beings. The path of avidya or advancement of material knowledge for sense gratification is the path of repeated birth and death. As he exists spiritually, the living entity has no birth or death. Birth and death apply to the outward covering of the spirit soul, the body. Death is compared to taking off and birth to putting on of outward garments. Foolish human beings who are grossly absorbed in the culture of avidya, nescience, do not mind this cruel process. Enamored with the beauty of the illusory energy, they undergo the same miseries repeatedly and do not learn any lessons from the laws of nature. Therefore, the culture of Vidya or transcendental knowledge is essential for the human being. Sense enjoyment in the diseased material condition must be restricted as far as possible. Unrestricted sense enjoyment in this bodily condition is the path of ignorance and death. The living entities are not without spiritual senses. Every living being in his original spiritual form has all the senses which are now materially manifested, being covered by the material body and mind. The activities of the material senses are perverted reflections of the activities of the original spiritual senses. In his diseased condition, the spirit soul engages in material activities under the material covering. Real sense enjoyment is possible only when the disease of materialism is removed. In our pure spiritual form, free from all material contamination, real enjoyment of the senses is possible. A patient must regain his health before he can truly enjoy sense pleasure again. Thus, the aim of human life should not be to enjoy perverted sense enjoyment, but to cure the material disease. Aggravation of the material disease is no sign of knowledge, but a sign of avidya, ignorance. For good health, a person should not increase his fever from 105 degrees to 107 degrees, but should reduce his temperature to normal 98.6. That should be the aim of human life. The modern trend of material civilization is to increase the temperature of the feverish material condition, which has reached the point of 107 degrees in the form of atomic energy. Meanwhile, the foolish politicians are crying that at any moment the world may go to hell. That is the result of the advancement of material knowledge and neglect of the most important part of life, the culture of spiritual knowledge. Sri Isopanisad herein warns that we must not follow this dangerous path leading to death. On the contrary, we must develop the culture of spiritual knowledge so that we may become completely free from the cruel hands of death. This does not mean.
Fine. Good. So,
Correct.
what is explaining here how one can attain immortality. Because before that, Prabhupada is talking about how Hiranyakashipu was trying to be immortal, and then Hiranya and Kashipu, Prabhupada is explaining that how it is the Hiranya means gold, and then Kashipu means the soft bed. How he was so much engrossed into sense gratification, and this person who wanted to enjoy a wealth and a woman by becoming. I mean, for that he just wanted to be immortal, for just for enjoying a wealth and a woman. And then, unfortunately, he was killed. Not fortunately, but he was killed by Lord Nrsimhadev. And this Hiranyakashipu. There are many tiny Hiranyakashipu Prabhupada is mentioning in this world who are just running behind Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maitanamsha. And that's why they are nothing but becoming like an animal. And the small tiny Hiranyakashipu like demons. They have a lot of plans to enjoy this material world moment by moment. And then unfortunately, because of all these things, they're just struggling in this world of material world of and there's this there's just a struggle for existence which is going on. And they are not following the laws of material nature, which are the laws of material nature are hard. And then one has to surpass these laws of material nature. He has to understand how can I surpass these laws of material nature, and that's why Prabhupada is further telling how one cannot surpass. Prabhupada is saying that to become a happy in this life and to attain a perfection and blissful life, immortality after leaving this body, one must study the scriptures like Upanishad, Vedanta Sutra, Gita, Bhagavatam, and learn the process of going back to Godhead. That's very important. But they say the conditioned soul forgets their eternal relationship with the Lord, but the Lord reminds a human being through the scriptures that their home is not a material world and the real home is a spiritual world. And different acharyas and different incarnations of God are to teach this living entity that we are just nothing but the God's children, and He is the one who is going to free us from the suffering of this material world, and we are just a servant of Lord. And Lord, something that is the reason Lord personally comes to propagate this message that we have to connect ourselves with Krishna. That's very, very important. After explaining that, Prabhupada is also talking about how one can attain the balance between avidya and avidya. Prabhupada is saying that the material miseries serve to identify, so the material miseries are they serve to indirectly remind us about the incapability with the dead matter. The dead matter is not capable of doing anything; it's incapable. And the intelligent person take these reminders and utilize the best opportunity of a human life. Manusham Janma, the Durlabham Manusham Janma, that this human birth is very, very rare, and he takes the benefit of that. And one who does not take a benefit of this is Naradhama, who is the lowest of the human being. They explain here how this person who are low, who does not take the benefit of a human birth and attain the knowledge and attain the scriptural knowledge, and he is utilizing this human birth to get a self-realization. That person is very correct. Otherwise, others are incompletely in avidya. And those who are in avidya, advance in the material knowledge, unrestricted sense enjoyment, these people are just engrossed into a cycle of birth and death. Every jiva has its original spiritual form. Jiva has its own spiritual form. And now, because he's influenced by the material world, he's into his activities of the material sense gratification are perverted reflection of the activities of the original spiritual form. So, original spiritual form, his activities are service to Krishna. He is Jewel Swarupa Krishna Nityadas. He is always a servant of Krishna. But then person who is engrossed into material sense gratification, his activities are only for gratifying his senses. It is opposite to the original, the activities of a soul. And because of this disease of materialism, a person is, is completely engrossed into the sense gratification, and he has to cure this material disease. That's very, very important. The disease of materialism has to be cured before the real sense enjoyment is possible. Spiritual sense enjoyment is possible. Aggravation to the material disease is a sign of ignorance. Prabhupada is mentioned this particular thing. That the sense enjoyment is the material disease, materialism is the disease, and then aggravation of this material disease is a sign of ignorance. And then that's why Prabhupada is giving this example here of a fever. A person who has a fever of 105, he does not increase it to 107, but he should try to reduce it. And that's why this aggravation of materialism has to be controlled, it has to be reduced. And that's why a person has to take shelter of the scriptures like Shri Shobhishad and all other scriptures. And the balance is cultivating spiritual knowledge needs the help of a body and mind. So bodily maintenance cannot be stopped, but one must make the best use of a Badgani. The great saints did this by the balanced progress of a spiritual and the material knowledge, Vidya and Avidya. So this balance is also explained further. Can somebody read ahead? Now we are going to discuss about the balance. Anybody is reading?
Prabhuji, this not like starting from this does not mean our human activities, Prabhuji.
Starting from this does not.
This does not mean that all activities for the maintenance of the body should be stopped. there is no question of stopping activities, just as there is no question of wiping out one's temperature altogether when trying to recover from a disease. To make the best use of a bad bargain is the appropriate expression. The culture of spiritual knowledge necessitates the help of the body and mind. Therefore, maintenance of the body and the mind is required. If we are to reach if we are to reach our goal, the normal temperature should be maintained at 98.6 degrees. And the great sages and the saints of India have attempted to do this by a balanced program of spiritual and material knowledge. They never allow the misuse of human intelligence for diseased sense gratification. Human activities diseased by a tendency toward sense gratification have been regulated in the Vedas under the principles of salvation. This system employs religion, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. But at the present moment, people have no interest in religion or salvation. They are only they have only one aim in life, sense gratification, and in order to achieve this end, they make plans for the economic development. Misguided men think that religion should be maintained because it contributes to economic development, which is required for sense gratification. Thus, in order to guarantee further sense gratification after death in heaven, there is some system of religious observance. But this is not the purpose of religion. The path of the religion is actually meant for self realization, and economic development is required just to maintain the body in a sound, healthy condition. A man should lead a healthy life with a sound mind just to realize Vidya, true knowledge, which is the aim of human life. This life is not meant for working like an ass or for for culturing avidya for sense gratification. The path of vidya is most perfectly presented in Srimad Bhagavatam, which directs a human being to utilize his life to inquire into the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized step by step as a Brahman, Paramatma, and finally Bhagavan. The personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, is realized by the broad minded man who has attained knowledge and detachment by following the 18 principles of the Bhagavad Gita described in the purport to Mantra 10. The central purpose of this 18 principle is the attainment of transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead. Therefore, all classes of man are encouraged to learn the art of devotional service to the Lord. The guaranteed path to the aim of Vidya is described by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, which we have presented in English as the nectar of devotion. The culture of Vidya is summarized in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, 14, in the following words. Tasmat ekena manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Patihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Deya Pujyasya Cha Nityada. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotee. Unless religion, economic development, and sense gratification aim toward the attainment of devotional service to the Lord, they are all simply different forms of nescience, as Sri Isopanisad indicates in the following mantras.
Roji, your video is off, I believe.
Video is on. Smooth it. Hare Krishna. Yes. So here,
Roji,
yes, bro.
your video is off, I believe.
No, it's on.
I don't know, like it's black screen.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Now it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Prabhupada is explaining about the balance, and then balance is by cultivating a spiritual knowledge. One can attain a balance between Vidya and Avidya by cultivating a spiritual knowledge. That's very, very important. We will be studying in Bhagavad Gita also about this cultivation of the spiritual knowledge, mainly in the 4th and 6th chapter, and then again 13, 14, 16, 17 chapters talks about this cultivation of the spiritual knowledge. In the beginning, the Prabhupada was talking about the 13th chapter, Kshetra Kshetrajna of Bhagavad Gita. That is also cultivation of spiritual knowledge, and by cultivation of the spiritual knowledge, person can balance, and then he knows how to bring that fever from 105 to 98.6 degree, and then in his life will be peaceful. Prabhupada is talking about dharma. He's saying dharma is actually meant for self-realization, and artha is required for bodily maintenance. One should lead a healthy life with a sound mind just to realize Vidya, the aim of life. So the aim of life, unfortunately, a materialistic person who is in avidya, his aim of life is just a sense gratification. And then that's why the person, people are many times misguided. Right? You just enjoy this material world is the guidance. But then man with the Prabhupada, a man should lead a healthy life with a sound mind, just to realize Vidya, the true knowledge, which is the aim of human life. The life is not meant for working like an ass, but the cultivation of working like an ass for a culturing the avidya for self-graduation. Life is not meant for that. The path of Vidya is the most perfectly presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's why Prabhupada is glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam. And then how perfectly this particular path is mentioned is from Dharma, Artha, Kama are aimed towards Bhakti. Then they all are simply a different form of a nescience. So Bhakti is a very important thing. Bhakti is to be practiced very sincerely, and that bhakti it can be attained by the proper knowledge or proper reception of a vidya. And then the path of vidya is summarized in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.14 as one pointed attention to constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship Krishna, the protector of the devotees. This is further described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sorry, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, talks about this particular point that one has to constantly, Avyartha Kalatvam, should not spend waste time, and he should constantly remember, hear, and glorify, worship Supreme Personal Godhead, Krishna. So the conclusion of Vidya is to worship a Supreme Personality of Godhead. The guaranteed path to aim of Vidya is described by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which have presented in the 8 in the English as Nectar of Devotion. The culture of Vidya is summarized in Srimad Bhagavatam in the following words. Tasmat ekena manasa Bhagavan Satwatampati Shrotavya Kirtitavya Deyesha Pujya Sanityada. So that Satwatampati, so Supreme Person of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotee, is Satwatampati, the protector of the devotees, is constantly to be glorified, remembered, worshipped, and one should hear about that Supreme Personal Godhead. That is very, very important. So, this particular worship of Supreme Personal Godhead and glorification is further explained in next few verses. So, till now, what we have studied is living in harmony with the God, Ishavash principle. Then we also saw the spiritual vision, how Lord is having many special qualities. He's inconceivable. He's beyond equal. He's there are many other qualities which are explained beyond the limited understanding of this material world. And attaining Lord can be possible with the divine qualities, and attaining Lord can be by the equal vision one will be able to develop an equal vision when he's trying to attain the Supreme Lord. Then we also saw Vidya and Avidya. Now we are going to see about the Sambhuti and Asambhuti in next verses. So before we move to verse number 12, shloka number 12, we should understand Vidya and Avidya very well. So we saw Vidya is a self-realization, knowledge about the attainment of Krishna. Avidya is talking about the knowledge which is related to material body, and also Avidya condemns those who are misguided people who have received a knowledge of the Vedas, but they are completely misguided, and that misguided people are, their life is very dangerous, or the misguided people's position is very, very risky, very dangerous. That's part of Avidya, which is explained. And then the result of Vidya and Avidya are also further explained after knowing the results of Avidya and Avidya. The very important thing comes is the balance between Avidya and Vidya is very important. So this balance ultimately should lead to knowledge, which is a glorification of Supreme Personal Godhead Krishna, which is helping a person to remember, worship, and constantly hear about the Supreme Personal Godhead, who is the protector of a devotee. So, unless a religion, economic development, civilization aim towards attainment of devotion service to the Lord, they are all simply different forms of science. So, all this Artha, Dharma, Artha, Kama should lead to a devotional service. That's very, very important. So, this is explained in the further verses. Yes, Prabhu, what is the question? Vijay Singh Yadav.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandapana. Veda describes dharma, artha, kama and moksha, four purushottas.
Yes, Chaturpurusha.
My question is dharma, artha and kam avidya? We can say this
The
avidya.
last statement, if you see, Prabhupada is writing, unless religion, that is dharma, economic development, that is artha, and self-graduation, kama, is aimed towards a devotional service. It has to aim towards a devotional service to the Lord. If it is not aimed towards a devotional service, they are only simply a different forms of science, that is avidya. So dharma, artha, kama should lead to moksha, and it should, more than a moksha, it should lead to a devotional service, which is also called as a panchama purushartha. So they all should lead to a devotional service towards a Supreme Personal Godhead. If it is not leading to devotional service, it is science, it is avidya. Okay, bro?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else?
Prabhuji, being a devotee, Prabhuji, we never expect about moksha, Prabhuji. Like, what should be our mood now, Prabhuji? Like, Jivara Swarupa hoy Krishna Nityadas. Like, Gruhe
Being a
Dako
devotee, we never aspire for moksha. Moksha means mukti. There are 5 kinds of mukti: Sahaja, Samipya, Sarupya, Sashti, Salokya. So this, we are not aspiring for muktis. Our aim is to serve Krishna eternally. So wherever, in whatever position Krishna is wanting us to stay in, we serve. That is the mood of a devotee. Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Anyone else? Okay. Fine. So we will stop here. Again, 10 minutes are remaining. So we will study tomorrow the remaining verses, whatever we can. So the Sambhuti and Asambhuti is explained in the further verses. So that is worship of the Devatas, and how the worship and the worship and the impersonal Brahman is explained. So the verse number 12, 13, 14 talks about Sambhuti and Asambhuti. So tomorrow we will try to complete these 3 verses, verse number 12, 13, and 14. Okay. Thank you very much. We stop here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Isopanisad ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thanks
Krishna.
for Wonderful class, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.